The resignation of British Prime Minister Keir Starmer today, less than 2 years after leading Labour to a landslide general election victory, will inevitably prompt familiar headlines about Britain's revolving door of prime ministers. 7 leaders in a decade, particularly when compared with countries where presidents can remain in office for fixed terms regardless of their popularity. Yet, beneath the surface lies something rather remarkable. Britain's parliamentary democracy has once again demonstrated that political authority belongs not to an individual, but to Parliament, to political parties, and ultimately to the people they represent. For all its imperfections, the British system contains an important safeguard against political stagnation. A Prime Minister governs only while they retain the confidence of their parliamentary party and command a majority in the House of Commons. Once that confidence disappears, the machinery of democracy begins to move. There are no constitutional crises, no military interventions, no disputed election results, and no desperate attempts to cling to office. Instead, there is an orderly transition governed by established rules and long-standing constitutional convention.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. And I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party. I have spoken to His Majesty the King this morning to inform him of my decision, and I will do everything I can to ensure an orderly handover of power. I will also give my successor my full and unequivocal support.
Keir Starmer accepted that his parliamentary colleagues no longer believed he was the right person to lead Labour into the next election and announced that he would step aside with dignity while supporting his successor. That is democracy functioning exactly as intended. Having 7 prime ministers in 10 years is not evidence of instability. There is an argument that frequent leadership changes can make long-term planning more difficult, but there's another way of looking at it. The ability to remove leaders before the rot truly sets in is a strength, not a weakness. Democracies should be responsive. They should allow elected representatives to express dissatisfaction when governments lose direction or public confidence. Waiting years for a fixed election date, regardless of circumstances, may provide stability, but it can also entrench failure. The British system recognises that governing is a collective endeavour. Prime Ministers are not directly elected presidents with personal mandates that override everyone else. They are leaders of the party that commands a majority in Parliament. It is that parliamentary majority which governs the country. And consequently, when the governing party chooses a new leader, it also chooses a new Prime Minister. There is no constitutional vacuum because the democratic mandate belongs to the governing party elected by the public, not solely to one individual. Now, that distinction is often misunderstood abroad. Many assume that a fresh general election should accompany every change of Prime Minister. Yet Britain's constitution has long worked differently. Voters elect members of Parliament. Those MPs determine who can command the confidence of the House of Commons. It is a system built around Parliament rather than personalities. The likely succession of Manchester's Mayor Andy Burnham illustrates this principle perfectly. Following Starmer's resignation, Burnham quickly emerged as the overwhelming favourite for the Labour leadership after securing widespread backing from Labour MPs, including a former rival, Wes Streeting. The election of Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, which could come as soon as July 16, is essential timing for the UK, as the rise of the far right, the rise of the Reform Party under Nigel Farage, has caused division at a level not seen before. If he is elected Labour leader by the Parliamentary Labour Party and the party's constitutional processes, he will become Prime Minister because Labour continues to hold its parliamentary majority. The transition is designed to be orderly, ensuring continuity in government while allowing political renewal. None of this diminishes Keir Starmer's achievements. His 2024 election victory ended 14 years of Conservative government and brought an end to an era of austerity politics that had defined much of the previous decade. After years of cuts to local government, squeezed public services, declining infrastructure investment and stagnant living standards, Labour secured one of its biggest victories since the days of Tony Blair back in 1997. Millions of voters wanted change, and Starmer delivered it. The challenge, however, was always going to be greater than winning an election, especially with rampant bullying from the UK tabloid press. Now, governments can influence economic conditions, of course, but they cannot repeal economic reality. Britain's cost of living crisis had proved stubborn precisely because it reflects deeper structural problems. Housing costs continue to outpace earnings. Energy prices remain vulnerable to international shocks. Food prices have risen faster than many wages. Productivity growth has been disappointingly weak for years, limiting the economy's ability to generate sustainable increases in living standards. No government, whether Labour or Conservative, can simply decree higher wages if the underlying economy cannot support them. Businesses cannot endlessly absorb higher labour costs without consequences, while governments cannot permanently subsidise living standards through borrowing alone. The uncomfortable truth is that Britain faces economic constraints built up over decades rather than problems created in 2 years. And recovery from Brexit and COVID hit Britain harder than most. That reality helps explain why Starmer's political honeymoon evaporated so quickly. Expectations after such a commanding electoral victory were immense. Many voters understandably hoped for rapid improvements in their everyday lives. Instead, they continued to experience pressure on household budgets, despite changes in government. Political disappointment often follows when electoral victories collide with economic limitations. Yet the response to that disappointment says something important about Britain's democratic culture. Rather than constitutional breakdown, there has been constitutional continuity. Rather than violent confrontation, there has been peaceful transition. And rather than personal bitterness, there have been public statements acknowledging service and promising cooperation during a handover. Starmer pledged his full support to his successor, while Burnham praised Starmer's contribution and committed himself to an orderly transition focused on stability. Another overlooked strength of British democracy is the comparatively modest role of money in politics. British elections are tightly regulated, campaign spending is capped, broadcast political advertising is prohibited, and the sums involved are tiny compared with presidential campaigns in the USA. While donations and lobbying remain legitimate subjects of debate, the financial scale of British politics bears little resemblance to systems where candidates must raise billions of dollars simply to compete. That matters because it changes incentives. Most people entering British politics know they are unlikely to become extraordinarily wealthy through campaigning. Success depends far more on earning the confidence of colleagues, party members and voters than on assembling enormous financial war chests. The expectation, at least in principle, remains that those seeking office are motivated primarily by public service rather than personal enrichment. Now, no political system is perfect, and Britain has its fair share of flaws. The country continues to wrestle with low growth, strained public finances, regional inequality, and declining trust in institutions. Leadership changes alone cannot solve those problems. But watching another peaceful transfer of power unfold according to the established constitutional norms should remind us why democratic institutions matter. They provide mechanisms for accountability without disorder. They allow governments to renew themselves without abandoning legitimacy, and they ensure that no leader becomes indispensable. Governments come and go, leaders rise and fall. Yet Parliament continues to sit, the law continues to apply, elections remain meaningful, the Constitution, though largely unwritten, continues to function.
And when I leave the biggest job in the country, I shall spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to my fantastic wife Vic, who has been a rock by my side through good times and bad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy. Thank you very much.
There is something profoundly reassuring in seeing political power transferred not through coercion or chaos, but through accepted rules, mutual respect and constitutional convention. It's a reminder that democracy is not measured by how long leaders stay in office. It's measured by how peacefully they leave when the time comes. And as a Briton, that remains something worth being proud of. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, on Global AF, on Legal AF, and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.